on that note, Dan, we do have some questions here. And you ready to play a truth or dare on Q&A?
I stump the chump. So let's.
All right, stump the chump. And the winner gets a free bass trip with Mr. Austin since the season is opened up. Okay, here we go. Here's a first question from Maggie from Florida. She was actually one of my course members and a friend. It says, we are completely shut down doing food tours. We are dependent on local restaurants. When will they open? Who will reopen? How many folks in them at one time? Obviously, we're months from reopening. What would be your top 3 suggestions for us to do first when we have those answers? Dan?
Wow, that's a lot to unpack there. Obviously, none of us know. We are starting to see pockets opening up around the country, at the 25% occupancy. I know I have a lot of friends that are restaurateurs, and they tell me the margins just won't sustain that. So it's still going to be tough. But I think that what was the last part of that question one more time, Tim?
No problem. It's relevant to these restaurants, them being dependent on restaurants as part of their food tours. It says when they do open up and when they do have parameters of how they're opening up, what are your top 3 suggestions for them as a food tour operator to do first to kind of reopen and re-engage with their marketplace? So they're closed down now. I know this company.
Yeah, well, what we're seeing a lot of, obviously, is the to-go, and that would be a great start, is to make sure you stay relevant by coming up with some sort of amazing to-go package. I have a friend that's in a similar business, and they did something really neat. They created gift boxes from the local region. That they were actually trying to remember, I think they were out of Nashville, and they created gift boxes with barbecue sauces and recipes and all that. And they did it to create a little revenue, and it exploded. So they literally were able to stay relevant and create a little revenue by creating kind of I guess you call it a virtual, restaurant visit. But I think that the past that, it's going to be tough. Other than, again, embracing the restaurants as your partner, and even if you have to go the to-go route, right? That doesn't mean the chef can't come out and explain what he did and how he did it, and make something unique out of it. Make it an experience. I mean, everything we do and everything most of us do, it's all about the experience. So you got to we for years have done picnics in the parks, national parks. And instead of eating in the restaurants, we'll do picnics. And they become legendary because the guides embrace the fact that, a picnic doesn't have to be cold cuts. They can go hog-ass wild and create a picnic that literally blows, people's minds. And then that's what they remember. So I think that the answer to that, the long story is, the answer to that would be to continue to try and make it an experience. Come up with some way, some gimmick to make however you get started again, make that part of the experience.
That's good. And I would add to that, for those of us who've got bigger trips or multi-days, there's no reason why we can't start the experience in advance and send some that gift box in advance, and start giving them something physical in their hand to kind of keep the anticipation, keep the excitement going. So now we get to make it up. And I love your idea, Dan, about, hey, get the chef to come out. And, this is the opportunity to make something interesting. So if you got questions, folks, put them in the chat box. We're going to move on to the next question. This is from Joe. I can't pronounce your last name, Sayano. Thank you, Tim and Dan. You mentioned chomping at the bit and pent-up demand. I agree. How do we in the industry guard/plan against over-visitation, oversaturation once things open up?
Joe, that's a great question. I mean, literally, as we all see the world, the physical world is taking a breather, right? There, you're seeing dolphins in the canals and all kinds of crazy stuff again. The national parks, there's probably never going to be a time like this in our history to visit the national parks without the crowds. We were on the phone with the superintendent of Yellowstone a couple of days ago, and no tour buses this year, like none. And literally no tour buses, The international travel scene is going to obviously be at an all-time low. So this year, I don't think that's not going to be a worry. It's actually going to be a great time to travel if you can do it. Long term, it'd be great if they learned from this, right? In other words, if they took and said, okay, this is where, look at Yellowstone with 4 million visitors last year, and look at Yellowstone with 2 million visitors this year. And how can we do that? How can we manage that? Whether it be through shuttles, or I'm sorry, any of my friends that have tour bus businesses, maybe it's eliminating the size of tour buses or minimizing the size of tour buses. Again, the big cruise ships, we all know, they're kind of the antichrist of tourism when it comes to, taking over a small port and not really embracing sustainable tourism. Ships are going to start maybe shrinking in size, fewer of them. So I think there's going to be a little bit of it just kind of by nature. As far as how can we ensure it, boy, Joe, your guess is as good as mine. I think just learning and seeing what works this year might actually motivate us to dig a little deeper and try a little harder in the future.
I think the market is also going to help us determine, because no matter how much they open up, the market is ultimately going to determine what level they're interested in showing up and doing this. And I think, just the social distancing will help determine that. Hey, we got a question to you, Dan, from Josh Cohen. Dan, you mentioned you're starting and running your first trip June 14th. I'm assuming it's domestic. When do you see yourself starting to ramp international trips back up? How are you navigating the international situation?
So great question. God, these are all tough. They should have brought an easier crowd, Tim. There's a great website out there. I apologize, I don't have the link right in front of me, but there's a great website out there that has 150 countries on it and what their daily, what's going on daily, but literally just monitoring it, talking to our partners in country, our guides in country. And to be honest with you, we're starting to look at that now. I saw a great article about Costa Rica being one of the first international destinations to open up. And we have a pretty strong Costa Rica program. So we, immediately reached out to our partners in Costa Rica to ask what they're seeing and how can we slowly start introducing. Great question this morning. I asked my what's left of my marketing team to create an infographic of the top 10 international trips that we anticipate opening, in what order. Iceland, for example, and Costa Rica. So we're starting New Zealand. Well, New Zealand's probably not going to open up to foreign tourists, but it's really going to come down again, as we've said over and over again, to the market. And there's just too many unknowns at this point still. I mean, a lot of countries are opening up and then closing back again, right? We're seeing that. So we're fortunate that we have, domestic is about 65%, 70% of what we do. And so that helps a ton. But internationally, we have guides or partners on the ground, and we're literally talking to them every day to find out, what kind of consensus is. But we will start today. We will start looking at where are those strongholds. Today when I saw the article on Costa Rica and I read it, I was thinking, okay, is it time to start promoting a Costa Rica Christmas trip? We have one. We haven't even thought about it for a couple of months, but maybe it's time to start thinking about that. So still early. I think we're really early at the kind of those first few steps. There's kind of 4 different steps to a situation like this. And the first one is fear. And we're kind of out of the fear step. The next one is kind of understanding. I think we're starting to get into the next one, understanding, and the next is going to be planning and action. And so I think we're starting to get a feel for that planning and action phase.
Yeah, I think definitely this is going to unfold in phases, and maybe you're looking at a little further out than you would normally on some of your trip planning. I think the Christmas Costa Rica is a great analogy. We got a few more questions, Dan. We got 8 minutes, so we want to honor your time all, and so we're going to be pretty laser here. Again, thank you, Susan, for the comment and what Dan and his company are doing for travel agents. This is from Kathy Wood. Dan and Tim, what changes do you think tour operators will have to make? You mentioned number of people in a van, sanitation changes, etc. How do we help people feel comfortable about travel again, especially older travelers who have time and money, but may not be risk takers?
Great question. I'm kind of dealing with it every day. A couple of different things. One, on our scheduled departures, we're navigating towards and trying to use more properties with private access. In other words, cabins or at least outside access versus hotels with a common area. I think that's going to be big going forward. We're doing a lot more. We're seeing a lot more interest, and we've created some programs for homestays. In other words, literally, we rent a mountaintop executive style home, and that's home base, and it's just for them. I see that market growing exponentially. I've talked to a few people even late last night that they're already seeing it. So if there's any businesses that are kind of flourishing right now, it is the rental agencies that handle that market. They're doing quite well. So we're going to see that. We've already started to see, even prior to this, kind of the parks limiting size of groups on trails. I think we'll continue to see that kind of ratchet down 10 or less. Another product that we're launching in 2021 is we've always been, we're old. We've been around a long time. We've always done the 2 guides and 1 van model. Next year, we're going to go to a 1 guide, 6 guests model for select trips, just to really give it that, private, exclusive kind of vibe. Again, there's so many unknowns. I mean, today we ordered Austin Adventures logoed masks. We don't know what we're going to do with them yet. We don't know who's going to wear them or why or when, but we got them. So we're still dealing with a lot of the unknowns. And again, I think that's, do your best to anticipate and then just kind of react accordingly. But, have a plan A, B, C, and D in place.
Hold one of those masks for me. I want one. That would be cool. That would be a collector's item. And when we're old farts sitting around the rocking chairs drinking cold beers, we can be wearing our masks. Remember when?
Right.
That'll be fun. So we got a call. We got a good question from G. Elman. How do you see the markets in the Caribbean, specifically U.S. territories?
I think that better than some. I think that we all agree, that the closer to home, the better, right? So, I see this as a huge opportunity for the Caribbean. I see it as a huge opportunity for Mexico. I think, the Central America country, I think it's going to come back in phases. And again, I have no crystal ball. I don't know this. People are always going to travel. I envision, like Tim said earlier, a domestic bounce. I think we're seeing it already. We feel there'll be a big increase. People are always going to travel. We've seen it already. We just booked a couple of people the other day that were planning on going to China this summer, and they're going to Yellowstone instead. So I think domestically is going to be first. And then I think just literally, as the crow flies, closer the better. One flight, one connection. If anything that can be done in one connection is going to be key.
Yeah.
So anything that can be drive to is going to be real key. So I think that's it. I got to give a shout out to the airlines. I've been pretty impressed with what they're doing of late. They really are setting the bar for how to get people traveling again. I know there's some horror stories out there, but I think they're trying, and I think that's going to be key because we all know without the airlines, we're out of business. We need them to get our guests.
Here's a good question, Dan, that I've been toiling with myself, and I've talked with his clients about this, building on Kathy's question about mitigating client exposure and company liability. When we decide to run again, is there any specific suggestions, ideas, or what are you guys doing on liability release forms, ways to sanitize vans, tents, equipment, etc.?
Yeah.
Good question.
Again, I think yesterday, we finally finished our protocol policies, and we're sending every guest a pre-trip directive with suggestions, literally that says, obviously the obvious, for 3 weeks prior to your trip, minimize your contacts to, family and close associates only. If you don't feel well, don't come, on and on and on. Just literally, here's the obvious, pulled from the CDC or pulled from, again, using the airlines. When you're traveling, do this. What to expect before your trip, or what we expect of you before your trip, what to expect during your travels, what to expect on the trip. And we laid that all out for our guests and are sharing that with them tomorrow, literally. And then, we've had a lawyer look at our liability release, and we've said, I think it's clear that, we can't guarantee you're traveling. I mean, I hate to say it quite this way, but you're traveling at your own risk. And I think if you do all these steps and you listen, we've done our part and you do your part, we're all gonna be fine. Literally, I mean, I think that's the bottom line. And so we're making sure that we've taken steps. We're sanitizing the van, doing just, again, like the airlines, sanitizing the vans every night. We've got, everybody's getting personal hand sanitizer. We're giving the masks. We're giving, everything we can possibly think of. We're even, unfortunately, a lot of the things that we normally would do, we might have to take a few steps back this year. We're really big on sustainability, so we don't use paper products. I'm sorry, but you're probably going to see some styrofoam, takeouts this year. And we're going to have to, disposable knives and forks. We're going to have to take a kind of a break for a little bit on that. But again, I think it's just being proactive and laying it all out. Yeah,
and reaching out to your customers and to let them know it's the just like we're engaging with them before they even become customers, to let them know what our protocols, and let them know that their safety is our number one focus, and here's what we're gonna do. And so I like what you're doing, Dan. We got 2 or 3 more questions.
We did have to tell them no hugging, right?
Yeah.
We're notorious for hugging as tour operators and travelers. We had to say no hugging.
Yeah, no, it's a brave new world. Hey, so a couple more quick questions, and we'll see if we wrap this thing up in a couple minutes, Dan. Susan Kelly asks, my clients are asking me not to send printed copies of Virtuoso Life anymore because they want to lessen their paper trail. They want digital copies instead. Good idea to not print another catalog. As nice as they are, they eventually end up in the recycling bin. This shutdown has really shown us that we can do things more digitally. So yeah, that's where we're at. And as you say, it's going to save some money, but unfortunately, Dan, you may not be able to do your catalog in the way you did before.
Maybe I'll just do the covering for my wall or something. I don't know.
There you go. There you go. Well, a couple more quick questions. We've got something from Representative Rosetta of the Florida Restaurant and Lodging Association. Says, I can tell you that in-state and drive markets will be the first to come back. So I would suggest working with local destinations to create a packaging. We agree totally on that, Rosetta. From Karen Vega, we run a scuba operation in Puerto Rico and are required to have professional liability insurance. I am asking our provider, is there any thought of a payment plan instead of a pay in full fee in June, since income is nil? We probably won't have tourists until maybe the winter, but I'm told that we still need this insurance, even though we do not have any clients. Do agents have liability insurance and this situation, a full payment fee? Any thoughts about this? We only work with individuals and small families since we started 37 years ago.
Absolutely negotiate. We did. And literally, I think that's one of the insurance industry is one of the ones that has actually been pretty forgiving. We were in the same boat. Our insurance is well over $100,000 a year. And we literally we have vehicles that are sitting, we have, so we went back. They were actually very kind. They let us, they actually reduced our amounts based on current. So your amounts are based on projections. They actually revised those and then backdated them to where we actually got some money back. And then they applied that towards next year. But, what I tell my team is, and my accountants and everybody is right now, this brings out the best and the worst in people. Fortunately, it brings out the best in most. And a lot of our vendors have been awesome. We work, for example, I'll just throw a shameless plug out there for HubSpot. We work with HubSpot. It's very expensive. And they gave us a 90% break for 3 months. 90%. That was phenomenal, right? And so ask and negotiate.
Yeah, and just to wrap up here, Jared Sternberg reiterates what you and I know to be true and what you shared about negotiate. This is a time for us to be flexible, and we're all in this together. So I think we need to wrap this up. Scott, I just want to put out a quick plug for come back, folks, in 2 weeks. I'll be doing a dedicated webinar specifically about how you can generate more leads and more bookings from your number one marketing tool, your website.
Yeah, thanks.
On that note, Dan, thank you, sir. It's been a pleasure as always.